What's up YouTube, Zero here, and today I have a weapon blueprint review of the Blank Certainty, which is a weapon blueprint of the Peacekeeper MK1 in Call of Duty Black Ops 7. In this video, I'll go over the build, I'll talk about what I like, what I don't like, I'll talk about what I think about the Peacekeeper in general, and if this weapon attachment build really suits this weapon in general, if it's a good blueprint to utilize for the Peacekeeper. I'll also talk about the camo that you could see in the top right hand side of the screen. Before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Call of Duty Black Ops 7 content. I also post Pokemon TCG Pocket content. If you are interested in that, check that out as well. Without further ado, time to talk about the Blank Certainty of the Peacekeeper. So you can see on the screen already there is going to be a red dot sight, and it's going to be the Kepler Pro red dot. You either like this sight or you don't. That's going to be a matter of opinion. You can see it on the screen. In terms of the Peacekeeper, this build, I honestly do not like this sight for this gun. It takes up a little bit of the screen that I'm not always a fan of, but really it's a sight that's going to help you over ranges a little bit better. The Peacekeeper has a decent amount of recoil, especially vertical recoil, which can sometimes make it harder to control, particularly over those longer range combat scenarios. So in terms of this sight, which is going to enhance combat over those medium to longer ranges, this build, this blueprint setup doesn't have anything to help control the vertical recoil. So is this sight necessary on this gun? Not really. I would prefer to have something that helps me control the vertical recoil a little bit better, as opposed to this sight, which is going to enhance distance, and it's not really made for this type of build on this type of gun. So it's a decent sight in general, but in terms of this gun, I'm not really a fan. Let's move on to the muzzle, which is going to be the K&S Stalker 57-X. For this, you have no mini-map firing ping. I do like that. I like that a lot. You're going to be in a lot of matches, whether it's opponents calling in UAVs, whether it's opponents that are very good at recognizing the mini-map, seeing where enemies are shooting from. It's part of the reason why I love utilizing Ghost as one of my main perks. It's also one of the reasons why I love muzzles that don't allow me to show up on an opponent's mini-map. A lot of enemies are going to be very good, especially the better enemies are going to be good at noticing where you're at on the mini-map. So I like making sure that I am not on my opponent's mini-map when I am firing, so the opponents can't pick me off relatively easily or know where I'm at. So I like this attachment. Really, I like this attachment on a lot of guns. But in terms of this gun, because it's going to be a closer range type gun I mentioned earlier, the vertical recoil is pretty difficult on this gun. So in terms of that, this is going to be a little bit better at some of those closer ranges. And when you're getting into those closer range combat scenarios, you're going to get into situations where you're facing multiple enemies at once. So in terms of the muzzle, making sure that your opponents aren't seeing you is going to be great to take out multiple enemies at once, especially when you're surrounded by enemies. So I do like this muzzle. Next, a barrel, the 21-inch DF-3 merge barrel. What this is going to do, it's going to increase damage range, also going to increase the bullet velocity. I do like increasing the bullet velocity in terms of this gun. Going to be really nice, as I just mentioned. Going to be nice in terms of the closer range combat. Your bullets are going to fly faster, so you're going to have an opportunity to hit your enemies with those bullets a lot quicker. Unfortunately, though, as I mentioned, damage range. You're increasing the damage range, which is going to be nice, so you can deal more damage over those longer ranges. But unfortunately, with this gun, considering it's a little bit harder to use over those longer ranges, it's gonna be not as useful. Are you really gonna be getting into those longer range combat scenarios when you're not able to control the recoil over those longer range combat scenarios? You may be getting into combat scenarios where you're facing enemies with marksman rifles or rifles that are a little bit better over those longer ranges. So you may opt, and I opted in certain scenarios like that when utilizing this blueprint, just to not get into those combat scenarios at all. I'm probably not going to win a longer range combat against an M8. Those are just designed for those longer range combats. If I did have something to control the recoil a little bit better, I may opt for those battles. But in terms of this blueprint, the way it is, I'm just gonna skip on those battles. So increasing the damage range really isn't gonna do much for this gun. Next, there's an Underbarrel, the lateral precision grip. This is going to help with the horizontal recoil control. It's always nice to control recoil in general, whether it's horizontal or vertical. However, the Peacekeeper doesn't have that bad of horizontal recoil, to be honest. When you're firing the Peacekeeper without any attachments at all, it's really the vertical recoil that's really hindering this gun. The horizontal recoil isn't that bad. However, this does help out with the horizontal recoil control, which is always nice. I do like this grip, but in terms of this gun in general, I would prefer something for the vertical recoil control, because the vertical recoil is really where it's difficult on this gun to control. Last but not least, the Vulcan Reach extension, which is going to be a mag. It's going to increase the magazine size by 10 bullets. Increasing the magazine size is always going to be nice, unless you have a habit of just reloading after every kill like I do. I have to get out of that habit. I know it's a bad habit, especially when I have an increased magazine size. However, this is a decent attachment. Increasing the magazine size is always going to be beneficial, especially when, as I mentioned earlier, you're in some of those closer range combat scenarios, you're facing multiple enemies. You can take out multiple enemies without having to worry about reloading. So increasing the magazine size is always going to be welcome. So in terms of the overall attachment setup on this gun, there are a couple that I like and a couple that I don't like. The magazine, the Vulcan Reach extension, a great attachment to have. I would definitely utilize that on the Peacekeeper. Lateral precision, that Underbarrel, okay, but not as great for this gun. The barrel, increasing the damage range and bullet velocity, again, not as great for this gun. Muzzle, no map firing, is a very good muzzle for this gun. And then the optic, not really great for this gun. So in terms of overall blank certainty blueprint, I would pass on this blueprint setup. There are a lot better attachment setups that you could get on the Peacekeeper, especially if you're trying to shoot over those medium ranges. I would absolutely recommend utilizing an attachment that controls the vertical recoil. However, if you're going into those closer range combat scenarios with the Peacekeeper, I would just recommend attachments that increase movement speed to make it a little bit more like a submachine gun. So overall, this attachment setup isn't really great, regardless of if you're the closer range type gunfighter or the longer range type gunfighter. There are better attachment setups for the Peacekeeper. Pass on this, absolutely not my cup of tea for it, and I think you're going to want to skip it too. But let's talk about the statistics real quick. The bullet velocity is enhanced by 15%. The horizontal recoil control is enhanced by minus 20%, so it's a little bit easier to control that way. But you definitely need something for the vertical recoil control. Top right hand corner, you can see the camo. I do like this camo, really nice camo. Really something that I would love to utilize on the gun more. Let me know in the comments section what you think of this blueprint. Is this one that you're going to be using, or do you agree with me it's one that you should toss in the trash? I'd love to hear your opinions. Let me know if there's a gun you want to see a build setup for. Let me know in the comment section. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, peace.